Hi, everyone. Welcome. Happy Wednesday. Come on in and welcome to our lovely Wednesday afternoon Packback webinar, where we are going to introduce our newest product, Originality Fingerprint. As you're all filing in, I'll go ahead and go over some housekeeping. So webinar recording will be shared with all attendees within the next 2 days. Please use the Q&A feature to ask your questions. So you can pull up that Q&A feature now. You'll be able to ask all questions. We're going to try to answer them throughout the webinar. The panelists who aren't speaking will try to use either asynchronous or synchronous communication to get your questions answered. We're actually not going to be using the chat today, quite frankly. We're going to be using it to share materials because we have a lot of information to cover in a very short period of time. So it's going to be a little bit different if you are a frequenter of a Packback webinar. And we'll be monitoring the Q&A, the chat, and again, trying to really answer your questions and share materials. But if you're wondering, will this be recorded? Absolutely yes, and you'll receive that soon. So let's go ahead and do some introductions. My name is Kelsey Berenger. I'm the CEO of Packback, and I come from the teaching space. I used to be a high school chemistry and physics teacher before joining Packback 7 years ago, as of last week, and spent most of my time doing educator training before becoming CEO. So I'll go ahead and let Jess introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jess Tenuta. I'm one of Packback's co-founders, and I'm our Chief Product Officer. So I work very closely with Craig. My work focuses on spending a lot of time with our customers, helping to determine what we need to build next to support our product philosophy and support all of the users that use the platform. And I'll hand it off to Craig, who helps us figure out how to make all of those dreams possible.
Thank you, Jess. So I'm Craig Booth, Packback's Chief Technology Officer. So I run the engineering team that builds all of the stuff that we're about to show you, and I'm so excited that you get to see it. So back to you, Kelsey.
Wonderful. So before I show you the agenda, I just want to level set of what's bringing us here today. So Packback was founded in the mid-2010s, and really what brought us to life was trying to solve the student motivation problem. And we began using artificial intelligence powered models to drive automation to, again, solve the student motivation problem. And at the end of the day, every single algorithm we built, we wanted it to do two things: support educators and support teachers. And that's still what we focus on today. How we do it and spaces we've entered has absolutely evolved, but that was our main motivator. Now, over the last few decades, we've experienced a lot of technological development. I remember playing Snake on a Nokia, very different these days. But the last 4 years has felt honestly like several decades crammed into 4 years, especially since fall of 2022, when generative AI went mainstream and ChatGPT rocked our worlds. So since that time, we've seen headline after headline of cheating and will AI replace humans? Will it replace educators? Will it change education? And, you know, I think a lot of educators, students, administrators, companies like Packback started asking a lot of questions. One of them being, how do we detect academic dishonesty in this new world? How do we detect when there is AI-generated text? And what we've done since early 2023 is really reflected on that question. And where we're landing and where we have landed is that that's not actually the question we want to be asking ourselves. We don't want to ask the question continually, how do we better detect AI-generated text? And we're going to talk about in depth today why that's not the question we want to ask. But what we want to ask ourselves continually, and it goes down to the core of the student motivation problem, is how do we prevent academic dishonesty from happening in the first place? And what we're going to do today is really dive into that question. How do we prevent? Why do we want to prevent? How does this lend itself to the Packback product that we built in the middle of 2010? And what we're going to do today is try to build the best demo of a new product and also build the context of that new product. Whether you're brand new to Packback and you've never heard of this platform before, my wonderful colleague Jessica is going to do a great walkthrough over what we do. So we are going to spend some time. So if you are new to Packback, we'll go ahead and fill in some blanks. If you've been a loyal Packback user since we first launched, I know there are some names that I recognize from the RSVP list. Hey, Jadrian, if you're out there, we're going to hopefully have a really insightful and motivating new product announcement for you. So without further ado, we can skip the next slide and go to the agenda, Jess. What we're going to do today, oh, I think I might have missed the agenda, but we're going to do 4 things today. Oh, there it is. We're going to do Packback's pedagogical and foundational approaches. So we'll just level set about what we're about, how we do things, why we do things the way we do. We are going to do a deep dive into AI-generated text detection. If you're a pro on the technology, that is awesome. But we know not everyone is there in their journey. So we're going to spend some time actually discussing what this is and how we think about it. And then what you came here for, we're going to do a deep dive into the Originality Fingerprint product, give you that demo. We are going to not take a chance on a live demo. We pre-recorded one. Thank you, Jess, for doing that, just so that we don't have to worry about any bad Wi-Fi bringing us down or slowing us down. We're going to talk about the future of roadmap development, and then I'll share some final notes and considerations. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and get us into how Packback approaches originality. So one thing that I think is really important we spend time to discuss is why students plagiarize or abuse generative AI or generally engage in academically dishonest behaviors to begin with. I started my career in the classroom, and I witnessed many of my students engage in academically dishonest behavior, whether that was copying homework or cheating during a test. And there were a couple of things I saw. The most often, I would say, common theme I saw was that they lacked the skills to produce the product or do the work themselves. A lot of my students, they did not have the time because they had to work or they had to take care of family to come to post-school office hours. And if they had additional tutoring, they had additional support, their skill set was slightly more robust, I do not think they would have engaged in that behavior. I think there's a common misconception that when students plagiarize, it's because they're trying to get away with a bad behavior. Most often, it's because they're lacking confidence, they're lacking skills, or there's just some sort of external factor that's holding them back. Jess can talk about this a little bit more, share her experience, but being now at Packback and receiving product support tickets, we have students tell us that they didn't even realize they had plagiarized. They thought that they were citing their material correctly. They've asked us how they can avoid plagiarism. They've asked us how to cite sources properly. So Jess, I'll go ahead and pass it to you to talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I think that the main thing I would call out on this slide is really what people may generally think about as the main cause of plagiarism, of students being apathetic or not caring about the assignment, really is just one of many, many reasons that they may engage in that behavior. Top one here on this list really being making sure that students have the knowledge around how to properly cite sources. We'll talk a little bit more about that today in the product demo, but a lot of plagiarism or cases of academic dishonesty could be headed off by simply alerting students to a miscitation or a misrepresentation of copied text and helping them learn how to properly cite. But the bullet on here that means the most to me is the third section here around purpose and personal motivation around the assignment. And Kelsey's going to talk a little bit more about that in 2 slides from here. But when we really think about the purpose of Packback, we don't see ourselves as a plagiarism company, even though we're talking today about tools to help support originality and help to support educators getting transparency and students getting transparency into how to make sure that materials are academically honest. What we see ourselves as, first and foremost, is a company that's using the benefits of modern technology to help empower students with knowledge upfront, feedback upfront, tie what they're doing in their assignment to what they personally care about, and hopefully reduce the incentives to cheat in the first place through exactly what Kelsey was talking about. If with additional support, the reasons to cheat decline. So with that, I wanted to highlight one study that we pulled out here, but really wanted to emphasize what happens when educators use plagiarism detection services transparently. So big difference between did the teacher use plagiarism detection services and did they use them transparently to their students in a way that the students were aware that those tools were being used. So in one particular study, while there is an abundance of research on this, one study we pulled out here is interesting because it looks both at the decline of similarity in submitted papers, so cases where a student actually did have matches to external sources, declining drastically by 96.5%, but at the same time also saw an improvement in the students' overall scores on those assignments by 24%, right? So that tension between simply using these tools in a way that's transparent to the students, that the students are aware of, if they know they're going to be checked for plagiarism, Simply that presence of that deterrent not only reduces the cases of a student plagiarizing, but also means that they were putting more effort into the work, they were more engaged in the work, they put more effort into building out a submission that they could be proud of, and that was reflected in their overall outcomes. So we're going to talk a lot today about how do we use these tools to actually help drive better student outcomes in the class, not just reduce plagiarism. So I'm actually going to hand back off to Kelsey to talk about why we should care about any of this.
Yeah. So we should care about preventing plagiarism way more than we care about catching instances of plagiarism. That is the ideal end state. But I'm going to challenge that even more and say that even more than we should be trying to prevent plagiarism from happening, we should be trying to aim for authentic, inspiring, motivating learning experiences. When I joined the classroom, I was not excited to play a massive game of defense. That was not exciting to me. It's not why I joined the classroom. What was super exciting to me was asking myself, can I convince these 180 teenagers to love learning chemistry? And if I could do that, I'm a rock star. And that's really what we care about, is how can we get any student from any background in any course to genuinely want to learn the course material, even if it's something they never thought they would have to learn, right? And then part of that is, all right, but part of a holistic solution, we need to also talk about preventing them from making mistakes along the way. And then part of that needs to be, how do we catch it when those mistakes are made so we can have some learning moments, right? And keep that classroom fair. So Jess, if you want to take it away.
Towards that goal of helping students to authentically engage in their assignments and make sure that they're really equipped to succeed, I just wanted to give a little bit of a table setting of what Packback is as a company. We're going to spend a lot of time today focused on the very left-hand box here of writing and originality. But we have been building on our instructional AI tools that give students proactive feedback and give instructors AI-based grading assistance for about 8.5 years now. And we've been working with those tools to drive measurable student outcomes in the classroom for that time. So both grade improvements, student writing improvements as measured by final course outcomes, final assignment outcomes, and faculty and student feedback on their confidence and the self-reported quality of their writing, but also around student engagement. So while we won't talk as much today about student discussions on Packback, our Packback Questions product, these tools have all been designed around creating as many opportunities for students to engage in their own choice and autonomy in the classroom as possible, giving them proactive feedback so that they are empowered with the tools to be able to succeed before they submit, and creating opportunities for them to feel a sense of mastery and competency in the classroom. So again, our Deep Dives product sits inside of our writing and originality bucket here on the screen. So all of the folks that may have used our long-form writing assignments in the past called Deep Dives, you'll find those within this broader category of writing and originality on Packback. Our discussions product uses, again, AI to help students learn how to ask better open-ended questions and engage with their peers in a relatively self-moderating discussion community, leveraging those AI tools to make it easier to manage student-led discussion at scale. And while we have not emphasized it as much in the conversation today, our Writing Lab product is a direct-to-student writing feedback platform where they can get proactive writing feedback about any assignment they may be working on as a direct-to-student tool. And just to highlight some of the technical details of the platform, our platform is accessible for all students. We align ourselves to the WCAG 2.1 AA level of compliance. We're LTI certified and integrated for both gradebook sync and single sign-on, and we are SOC 2 certified. So that's just kind of the lay of the land of the overall platform. And we're going to dig in just in a moment here to how do we approach all of our tools on Packback. First, the central tenet of our platform is really thinking about how do we use technology to improve the circumstances that lead to student motivation, because we really see that as the foundation. So we can give feedback, we can build tools for boundaries like what we're going to talk about today with plagiarism prevention. But ultimately, the goal is, can we build an environment that encourages students to engage in their best work, to feel motivated, to feel connected to the work, and empower educators and students with tools that make that possible and scalable. So the three core hallmarks of how we approach our product principles are focusing on mastery-based feedback. So this is giving students feedback in real time that they can apply in real time to help them perform their best possible work before they submit. So instead of waiting until feedback can be provided after a student submits that may have a long lag time before they can apply it to their next assignment, we want to use the benefits of AI to provide instructional feedback while they write and help them submit their best work. We want to find connections to purpose. So both through their ability to ask the questions that they're interested in the classroom, to help faculty use the tool to lay out the entire purpose of the assignment and make students see the benefits of an assignment to their own postgraduate experience and their own life outside of the classroom. And then emphasize opportunities for students to make choices. So both choices around what to post and when they post and how they engage, but also choices around empowering them with feedback that they have the choice whether or not to apply. So they are given many, many small choices throughout the platform of you get grammar feedback and content feedback and style feedback, and it's up to you whether or not you want to use that feedback and apply it in your text or not. So all of this is based foundationally on self-determination theory, which is a framework that is designed to help lay out the hallmarks of what creates a motivating learning environment and a motivating environment, period. So when we talk about the tool, we want to be always emphasizing both improving student outcomes and improving faculty grading experiences. And when we talk about the new product launch today, these same goals are held up in the same way in our new Originality review assignments. So with all of our tools, we've been working towards building better student outcomes. We've pulled in one stat here around the satisfaction that faculty feel with student writing performance before and after their use of Packback writing. So as you can see, a very marked improvement in faculty reporting satisfaction and high satisfaction with students' work after their use of the Deep Dives writing platform, and also improvements to the ease with faculty grading. So when faculty are using the Deep Dives platform, they're getting AI grading assistance to help them get some recommendations on scores for some of the mechanical components of the text. They're also getting additional tools like plagiarism prevention, like AI generated risk detection, and all of this makes a much easier grading experience that helps to reduce grading time, about 30% of grading time per essay. So with that, I wanted to just lay out the approach that we've taken to originality in just 3 core principles. So first one being nurturing student and educator trust. One of the biggest things that we heard in our product discovery around this new product launch, both from students and faculty, is that the use of plagiarism detection tools in the classroom can really undermine the essential trust that exists between faculty and students. In one way, the educators oftentimes have context that the students may not have into how they're being measured on plagiarism. Students may not always have the transparency into what matches they had and what the teacher is going to see by the time they submit. So there's a nervousness that students feel around submitting their work onto many of the pre-existing plagiarism tools that are used in the classroom. And there's that imbalance of information. We really believe that the foundation of building that motivating learning environment is starting from a place of trust. Start from a place of trust in the students, that they want to do their best work. They want to be notified of mistakes. They want to try to prevent plagiarism before it happens, and empower them with information to do that. And then similarly, make sure that students and educators are always prioritized in that relationship, so that our tools or any tool that's being used is not creating a divide between the students and the faculty. The second big area that we want to always focus on is focusing on student outcomes first. So one approach that we've taken in our platform is that we are never delivering plagiarism feedback as standalone feedback. It is always delivered alongside broader feedback about the student's writing from a positive standpoint. So alongside where they're getting feedback on plagiarism and potential AI risk, they are also getting feedback on how to improve their grammar, style, and content designed to help students succeed. So not just reducing plagiarism, but giving them feedback that is proactive and helpful to help them succeed on their final assignment. And then the third is just an approach of radical transparency. So as I mentioned already, students, when they submit on tools that may be used in the classroom for plagiarism detection, there's a fear that students have of, I don't know, I'm trying my best, I'm trying not to plagiarize, but I don't know what's going to show up on the educator's report. The educator doesn't necessarily know what the student's intentions were or what those matches were. We want to make sure that we reduce that information imbalance. So anything the teacher is seeing, the student has the opportunity to see as well. And finally, we also want to make sure that we're empowering educators with tools on how to interpret and act on these originality insights. That's another big thing we heard in our product discovery, is that while someone may be using a tool to get feedback on plagiarism, they don't necessarily have tools for how to interpret those results. So what does 75% original mean? What does it mean when students have matches? How do we look at the intentionality behind how a student may have used an outside source? So we want to give instructors tools on how to interpret and act on those originality insights. And with that, I'm going to hand off to Craig. We're going to talk a little bit about AI generated text detection in particular, and give the lay of the land technically for how these tools work before we jump into how Packback applies them.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Jess. And I did say there was a question in the Q&A about false positives and AI-generated text detection. Just so you know, the answer to that is coming. But one of my favorite things to do when we're talking about AI is figure out how to give people an intuition for what's going on with a really complex algorithm. And my goal with the next few slides is to get everybody to the point where we can reason about and have opinions about AI-generated text detection. And the way to do that is, let's first start just with a couple of definitions. So I want to start by pulling apart plagiarism from AI-generated text detection. So prior to 2022, the concept of plagiarism was something that was pretty straightforward and well-defined. It is the principled acknowledgement of original authors, which means if you use somebody's work, either the ideas or the text, you cite them and you distinctly identify which words you borrowed. And when you're paraphrasing, that imperative remains. You may have rewritten it, but you should cite where the ideas and words came from. Now, in late 2022, with generative AI, this all became fuzzy because all of a sudden, a computer had the ability to generate content that's completely indistinguishable from human-authored text. Not completely, on the surface level, indistinguishable. And that sort of led to the definition of plagiarism here getting more fuzzy. It's not fuzzy on this particular slide. You might notice every single piece of text is inside of quotes. That's because every single piece of text is actually cited from this paper. But I just want to start by saying right now, I'm not talking about the somebody copied from a source. This is specifically AI generated something. Can we do the next slide? If somebody copies from a source, it's actually pretty easy to make a convincing case that they did. A plagiarism detector can directly match text to real sources and present those matches side by side, and somebody can look at that and make a decision. On the right here, this is an example from the Packback platform with some text that was submitted on the left, and then on the right is a corresponding match from a website called thebeliever.net. And you can see in the yellow highlights that this particular person changed one word in there. That looks like plagiarism to me. An AI detector is actually a very different thing and probably the best metaphor. This metaphor I've actually found is very, very applicable to the whole field. You should think of AI detection like forensic handwriting analysis. Exactly like that. And any gut intuition you have about forensic handwriting analysis probably applies to AI-generated text detection. So, imagine, maybe the best way to do this is with a thought experiment. Imagine you are a forensic handwriting specialist. Your job is you go to court day in, day out. You're presented with two pieces of text and asked, did the same person write text A and text B? And you go in there and you do your thing. You look at the shapes of the S's when they're in double S's, or does an E undershoot when it's written after a C. And at the end of that, you make your determination. I am 40% sure these are written by the same people. I am 99% sure that these are written by the same people. We just jump to the next slide. And if you're doing this, you have to make a decision. This is not a cut and dry science, right? Sometimes you are going to be right, sometimes you're going to be wrong. If you're good at this, you're usually going to be right and only very occasionally be wrong. But two people could have identical handwriting. Maybe somebody wrote with their left hand instead of their right hand one day. So you need to make a decision about how aggressive you're going to be. And if your decision is that you're going to be very, very aggressive, you're going to make a lot of false accusations. The other side of that, though, is you're going to catch most real cases and say these were written by the same person. On the other hand, you could be too conservative. You're going to make very few false accusations in that case, but you're going to miss a lot of real cases of matches. And this is an absolutely unavoidable trade-off in every field like this. This is true of forensic text analysis. This is true of AI-generated text detection. The only way to get to a zero false positive rate, a formally zero false positive rate, is actually a zero detection rate. You just have to say nothing's AI. And similarly, the only way you can be 100% accurate is just by flagging everything and accusing 100% of people. The moment you make a threshold above and below which you are going to make a decision, errors can creep in. So let's just jump into the next slide. To tie this now to AI-generated text detection, a lot of people will publish a detection rate, but this is kind of useless information on its own unless it's next to a false positive rate. So on the left here, I just have a text I copy and pasted from the websites of a few companies who make these things. Our detector has a 99.12% accuracy, has an accuracy of 99%, the most accurate AI detector, including 99% accuracy. But the question you have to ask yourself is, what is the false positive rate on these? And I found one company that publishes their false positive rate. They say less than 1%, which probably means very slightly less than 1%. And one paper in the academic literature, which is a big comparison of these models, who says that the closed source, that is commercial models, none of them have a false positive rate above 1.7%. And let's just stop and dwell on those numbers for a second. What does a 1.7% or 1% false positive rate actually mean? And should we consider it acceptable? A false positive here is an accusation of plagiarism, essentially. And if you imagine you are teaching a class of 100 students, this means if you have a 1% false positive rate, you're going to be making a false accusation essentially every assignment that's turned in. And I'm not going to drill down any further on this line of reasoning right now. I've got one more thing to say, and then I'm going to let Jess jump into the demo before I come back to talk about false positive rates. But whenever you hear a claim in the area of AI-generated text detection, we detect X%. The real key number is you detect X%, but at what false positive rate? How many false accusations are you making? And then one last point before we move on. There is also no clear winner here. So on the right here, this is the result of a literature review. 17 of these rows came from the paper that's cited at the bottom right. I added a few more that were published after that paper. But this is a compilation of tests of AI-generated text detectors. So each row is a paper. And what has been extracted is the best and worst detector as determined by each of these papers. Now, I've colored any detector that appears in both columns in its own color. And the absolutely stunning thing about this is that almost every detector appears in both columns at various times. So in some studies, something may be the best, in other studies, it may be the worst. And what this should tell you is that there is no clear best one here. What best is very much depends on the data set that goes in and what someone's using. The metrics being measured, do they even look at the false positive rate and the details of each tool? So again, I'm going to sort of put a pin in this line of reasoning here and just wanted to leave you with false positive rates. Is 1% acceptable? And this idea that we genuinely don't know which of these models is best right now. And with that, I'm going to hand you back to Jess to show you the platform.
Wonderful. Thanks, Craig. Before I jump into the recorded demos of the platform, I wanted to start with just a quick kind of slide comparison of our existing products to the new offering that we're rolling out. So if you're familiar with Packback and you've used our deep dive assignments before, a lot of what we talk about with today, covering our originality review assignments, will sound familiar with just some slight differences. I also wanted to emphasize too that our plagiarism analysis is not actually new in the platform. So we're talking a lot about it today. There's a new way to access it. There's a more scalable way to access it. But our plagiarism algorithms have been in place for about 6.5 years at this point in the platform and have been improved upon over that time. And within that, our uniqueness score has been a part of it as well. And our AI-generated text detection risk scoring has been a part of the platform since 2022. I know Craig just talked a lot about the risks of those tools. After we did the demo, we're going to come back to talking about Packback specific models for AI-generated text detection and how we work to minimize our false positive rate as the #1 priority of that tool. So our deep dive assignments, if you used them before, are focused on giving students real-time feedback. It is an editing platform, so students actually write within the deep dive interface, and they get real-time feedback from our AI that they can apply in real time by editing directly in the editor. That's based on the educator's rubric. So within deep dives, educators set up their own full prompt in the assignment, so they can write a title, add a description, share supplemental resources, flesh out the questions they want students to address in the course of their essay. And they can also customize rubrics extensively, and they can determine which aspects of the rubric they would like to be AI assisted in the grading process. Deep Dives provides robust AI assistance for educators while they're grading. The one foil here to compare that to on originality review assignments is that these are much lighter touch assignments for setups. I'm going to talk through the setup process on originality review assignments and demo that flow. But you can essentially think of our deep dive assignments as the full featured, full editing experience, full grading experience. And you can think about our new originality review assignments as sort of a light touch or a quick start writing assignment that makes setup really quick. You don't have to do all of the building of prompts and rubrics within the Packback platform. And the other big difference is that it supports students uploading their documents into the originality review assignments. They don't have to write within the Packback platform. They upload a document. This means this tool can support a wide variety of assignment types, a wide variety of document types, and also a wide variety of style guide types as well. So the students still receive AI student feedback. We standardize it to a core rubric, breaking it down by style, content, and grammar. And on a deep dive assignment, there are a bunch of additional categories that educators can turn on or off. So I'll jump into showing the experience of building an originality review assignment, but I wanted to highlight, why is Packback even adding this assignment type? Our current tools, deep dives and questions, are very hands-on in-class curriculum tools. So when educators adopt those tools, they use them extensively in their class. It's sort of a full adoption of the Packback platform for engagement, writing, discussion. We want to also make ways for students to get the benefit of proactive AI feedback while they're writing, and get educators and students proactive feedback around plagiarism prevention in a really light touch way that may meet classrooms that otherwise wouldn't want to use our full deep dives platform, but want to be able to get the benefit of instructional AI in their classroom and robust feedback on originality as well in a much lighter touch way. So both of these tools are LTI integrated. Both of these tools support gradebook sync. Both of these tools support plagiarism analysis and give AI student feedback with just a different level of instructor grading support. So the first thing I'm going to show in the demo walkthrough, and honestly, the reason I recorded these is I have a tendency to be long-winded, and this will force me to stay on a timeline for our short hour together. I'm going to show the process of creating a originality review assignment first. So you access originality review assignments in the same place that you would access any of our writing assignments. So the same place you would set up a deep dive. You can choose to create a new assignment and toggle between what kind of assignment you want to create. So either a deep dive or the originality review quick setup assignments. If I choose the originality review with the quick setup, all I have to add is an assignment title, a point value, and I can customize deadlines. So this is as simple as a couple of clicks to launch. And this will support integration with the LMS. So again, I can do my assignment setup, just a couple of clicks here, still be able to support linking to this from the LMS, support students single sign-on into this assignment. In the very near future, in the spring, deep linking will be supported for these assignments as well, and gradebook sync is supported. So I'm going to click into one of these assignments and show the process of what a student or a teacher would experience when uploading an assignment file to one of these assignments. So I'll click Start Assignment. I'm going to demo this. I'm in an instructor account right now, but it's the same flow for students. So I'm choosing a file here that I heavily plagiarized. So I pulled most of an article from Wikipedia, and then I modified the text significantly. So I edited, deleted, replaced, and then also included some content from ChatGPT as well into this file. So when the report finishes generating here, we'll show what that looks like for the student uploader to get that proactive alerting. And it's the same thing that educators can also play with and explore, uploading their own files to see the feedback that they get back as if they were a student, which is what we're going to see here. So as soon as this loads up, we'll first look at the plagiarism report and then also look at the AI risk report as well. So as you can see on the left-hand side, we have the student's document. We take their original document and we convert it so it can be interactive on the text platform here. So as I'm interacting with all of our tools, I'm able to see the highlights directly applied to that text, but I can always access the original document. And in this case, this document, very logically, since I plagiarized much of it from Wikipedia, has a very high risk of plagiarism. But with the plagiarism matches, we show not only the matched text, but also a side-by-side comparison. So this uses a difference comparison. Any text that the student has replaced, we highlight in yellow. Any text that they've deleted, we highlight in red. Any place where they've added additional content into the passage, we highlight in green. So to get back to Craig's point that he mentioned earlier, if we have a student who has that ability to have the comparison of what they pulled from an outside source, makes it very easy for an educator to look at, was there intentionality behind this match? And I'm going to pause here just for a moment. I'm getting ahead of the video, but the AI risk report that we just looked at there, we show not only a risk of AI use or AI content that may be used in the document here, we also give an explanation of how the instructor should act on that feedback. So I'm actually going to back us up and show that here. So as a teacher, I'm not only getting the moderate likelihood of AI-generated text with an explanation as to why, the educator also has recommended actions. And on a moderate case, we recommend that the instructor has a conversation with the student, looks back at their prior work that they've submitted into the platform, makes comparisons to the student's voice that they may have used in other assignments, and has an open-ended conversation with the student before assuming that it is a case of intentional AI abuse. Again, as we mentioned earlier in this conversation, these tools are new, and a lot of students, when they use them, may not be intentionally using them to commit a case of academic dishonesty. So what I'm clicking into here now is the more open-ended feedback on the student's document, starting with grammar feedback. So, oops, I think I restarted myself. Let me jump back to where we were. There we go. So as a student, I'm given grammar feedback that I can click through and see highlights in the text. I can see exactly where the grammar feedback is being recommended. I can see an explanation as to why. So for any of our feedback that we provide highlights on, we also try to pair that with an instructional piece of guidance for the student to understand how and why that feedback is true. And they can make determinations on if they want to apply that feedback. And if they do, they can make edits to their original document and re-upload a new file before submission. And I just showed another example here of passive voice. The student is getting highlights throughout their text with an explanation of what passive voice is and why their particular sentence had passive voice highlighted. So we have a variety of algorithms that students get feedback on. I just highlighted 2 here for today. But again, if a student has feedback that they've received, they can make modifications to their document and then upload a new version before submission. On the educator side, when grading an originality review, I'm going to click on the student Brian here in this example. It's a highly likely to be plagiarized document with low risk of AI abuse. And in this case, we have the plagiarism report matching 3% original text. We're going to show a couple of the example sources that the student may have plagiarized from, show that comparison. There was no changes in that example, so they didn't make any additions or deletions. They have a low risk of AI-generated text, so I'll click into that, I believe, in the moment here. But what I showed on the student side, with the students receiving grammar feedback, the educator sees the exact same feedback when grading. So on the notion of providing a balance of information between students and instructors, when they're using these tools, know that anything that they're seeing, the students saw too. So if a student has a grammar issue that was left unaddressed in their text, the educator can know the student saw that feedback and chose not to act on it, which creates a real balance of information of, hey, now I know that I can make determinations in my document and in my grading process that are based on whether or not the student would have seen that feedback previously, as opposed to not being sure of if they may not have known that they made a mistake in their text. So did it again. So in the originality review assignments, I can leave an overall comment on the student's document. I can give an overall score. In this case, I gave it an 82 out of 100. And I can leave inline comments as well. And that 82 out of 100 would sync back to the LMS. We support all major LMSs back as a grade column so that gradebook sync is supported from here. So grading can be accomplished within the platform. Even though it's a light touch grading experience, it gives all of the features to be able to support the gradebook sync back to the LMS. So originality review, again, to kind of summarize, these are our new assignment offering in the platform that leverage all of our existing multi-year development of plagiarism feedback and AI-generated text detection, but does so in a way that's very light and easy to launch for educators. What I'm going to show next is the more full-feature deep dive experience and show how these same tools are available to educators and students in our deep dives process for students to be able to receive proactive plagiarism feedback and educators to be able to see those reports as well. So when creating a deep dive assignment, I'm able to go up to the same place. I can choose between, again, an originality review assignment or a deep dive assignment. When I choose a deep dive assignment, I can either create a brand new prompt or reuse one of my existing prompts. In this case, for this demo, I'm reusing one of my existing prompts, which actually shows if you've created an assignment before, it's really one click to be able to reuse your rubric or reuse your assignments. So in this case, I'm going to choose not to add deadlines. They're optional, and launch my assignment. And the first thing I'm going to show here is the student flow. So just like when I showed it on originality review assignments, I'm going to click in and show what it looks like for a student to write inside of deep dives and get the robust feedback that deep dives can provide to them. So in a deep dive experience, students are able to write directly in the platform with our editor. They're able to see the content requirements from the assignment prompt. They're able to expand that right within the writing experience here, see their content rubric, see their prompt. They're able to get the proactive feedback on grammar and mechanics, research quality, formatting, etc. And again, here now, because I'm in a live editor, I not only get the grammar feedback, I can also interact with our two-way writing assistant chat. So I actually saw that piece of grammar feedback and I clicked explain this to me. I can get a more detailed explanation if I didn't understand the feedback to help tune the feedback to the level that the student needs to receive that feedback at. In addition to that, it's explain it to me prompts. I'm also able to interact with the chatbot in a more proactive way. So to get help on building out ideas for my paper. In this case, I clicked on the help me build an outline. And I actually am trying to show if we have a student who's trying to game the chatbot to get it to write for them. We've built out this bidirectional chat in a way that has a lot of scaffolding and safeguards on it to prevent the student from using these tools to write for them, but instead take advantage of the best things that generative AI has to offer to be able to give students that very interactive writing assistance. So in those outline building cases, the chatbot will continuously ask the students questions about how they can build out their own work as opposed to writing for the student. What I'm showing here is the feedback that students receive on citation. So students add sources to their deep dive assignment. They're able to get feedback on the credibility of their sources. In this case, I cited a Wikipedia article. I get feedback as a student on the use of Wikipedia and also on the use of a website and recommendations on how to choose a more academically appropriate journal article or academically appropriate source. So the last thing I'm going to show here very briefly is just since we are having students edit live in the platform, I want to call out a very functional but important feature on the Deep Dives platform, which is our version history. So students can always restore their versions from any of their past versions in the platform. And the last thing to show here is when instructors set up their prompts, they're able to add guiding questions. So in this case, the instructor added 2 guiding questions. How do 2 or more female characters interact within the story? And why do women play a small role in Tolkien's works? As a student, I can see highlights of where I have likely addressed the core prompts in my document. So kind of like turning on or putting on a pair of smart goggles and seeing, hey, did I actually address the requirements of this assignment? Am I missing anything? What is my teacher going to see when they go to grade my paper? All with the goal of pulling feedback as far forward in the process as possible. So in this case, I'm highlighting a case where the system believes that I likely have addressed the question of how do 2 or more female characters interact within the story. And it's a good way for students to do a gut check of, should I feel confident before I submit that I've addressed all the core requirements of my assignment? So the next thing I'm going to show is the experience of grading assignments on deep dives for instructors. And I'll show this quickly because I already showed the originality experience, and it's similar, but a little bit more robust on the deep dive side. So I'll go up to submissions and then choose a student's work and then go to grade that student's work. So I haven't started this assessment yet. When I click into here, as you can see, I hadn't started grading yet, but when I load it up, I actually have scores pre-populated in the instructor score column. These are generated by the Packback Instructional AI system with recommendations on the score for each of these mechanical categories. But we don't just give a number and say, you should take us at our word and believe it. Under any of our suggestions, we have a CY link. And when I click that, I'm taken into a panel that shows me the component algorithms within that recommendation. So this is looking at both, does it meet the source minimum requirement? Did they cite enough sources? And what was the average credibility of the sources they cited? Under grammar mechanics, I click on one other one here. So here we have grammar check as one of the requirements that's being graded on. I know as a teacher that anything I'm seeing here, and this student has only was able to receive a third of their recommended score for the grammar category. I know anything I'm seeing here as recommendations or issues with the student's text were something that the students saw in their work as well before they submitted. So on that idea of if I'm seeing it, the student already saw it, I can feel more confident in my grading experience and also feel confident assessing the quality of Packback's recommendations as well. Excuse my cough. Under the grading experience on the deep dive side, I'm able to access the Originality Fingerprint report from within the AI tools here. So I'm getting both a report of 100% unique text. This was not plagiarized, but it does have a moderate risk of containing AI-generated text. And I'll scroll down here and show the full recommendations. So it's text-based, but we're giving recommendations on what should you do next as an educator? How do you interpret these results? What you should do next to make sure that we are not making any false accusations of a student, both in the score that we provide a student on their AI-generated text risk, but also to make sure that the next steps take place to make sure that we are having all the correct conversations between the educator and the student to facilitate a positive outcome on any potential abuses of AI-generated text in their assignment. And the last things to show here very quickly, in addition to the AI-assisted mechanical components of the rubric, there are open-ended flexible categories of the rubric as well, where the educators can have full content guidance on the rubric. I can leave an overall comment on the document, and just like in originality review assignments, I can also leave inline commentary as well. So I'll show an example of that right here. I can highlight any text, leave the comment, and as an educator, I can access all of my past comments, make edits, reorder, etc., and then release the grades when I'm ready to the student. So from there, I'm going to hand back over to Craig to talk a little bit about the models that we use for plagiarism detection and AI-generated text detection as well.
Excellent. Thank you, Jess. So yeah, I'm just going to spend probably 5 minutes trying to give people the high-level overview of how both plagiarism and AI-generated text detection work. So I'll start with plagiarism. What happens behind the scenes whenever anybody submits any work is a 3-step process where we query, extract, and process. So we query any text that is given to Packback against 3 large data stores. There is the full body of work that has ever been submitted to Packback in the past. There is the entire public internet. And then there is a proprietary doc store containing millions of documents that we just search. And we're going to change those billions of documents into a couple of dozen of potential candidates. From those potential candidates, we actually go through the exercise of going character by character and extracting areas of textual overlap. So just any combinations of words that overlap between the source doc and the candidates. We then have a processing algorithm that figures out how to join these areas of match together to heal over edits that people may have made and present a change view of any plagiarism that may have happened. If we can just jump to the next slide. So this is just an example of this in the platform. I'm not going to dwell on this for over long because Jess has already shown a few of these, but this is an essay I submitted to the platform about biodiversity in the ecosystem, plagiarized it from a few places. And you can see here the engine found the plagiarism. You have a very easy and visible guide to exactly what changes this user made. So in the top left, they fixed some capitalization. In the bottom left, removed a quote, changed a few words. In the top right, changed some hyphens into numbers. But this is a pretty clear case of plagiarism going on. So to move on to AI-generated text detection, I'm just going to give you the 2-sentence of what we do. Which is we have a cutting-edge machine learning AI model powered by another large language model trained on 250,000 pieces of text. How do we know this works? There was recently put out a shared benchmark. So this is called the RAID benchmark. I've referenced it to the bottom right here, which is a set of 6 million docs, some of which are written by humans, some of which are written by machines, pulled across a wide variety of domains, everything from them being tweets to being entire books. And in this paper, the authors assessed how 11 different AI-generated text detection algorithms work. And on the right here is their summary. This is on the y-axis, what fraction of plagiarism you detect. On the x-axis is what fraction of false positives you're willing to tolerate. So if you're willing to tolerate 1% false positives, for example, you can trace a line up from that 1%, and different models will catch anywhere between 20% and 75% of AI-generated text, which I will note is just a very different number from the 99% that you generally see quoted on people's websites. We have a model that outperforms anything on this chart, but we choose to tune to a false positive rate of 0.005%. What this means is if you have tuned to a false positive rate of 1%, you will accuse 1 student in 100 of plagiarizing. Here, this is 1 student in 20,000 falsely accused. That said, I want to be honest that this remains circumstantial and not proof. And can we jump onto the next page? And the next step, like the next steps for solving for this are really all in the UX and how we present this. So I want to reiterate a few things that Jessica said. So we have to be honest that an AI risk report like this is circumstantial. There is no way around that. All AI risk reports in all pieces of software are circumstantial. We happen to have tuned ours to a much, much lower false positive rate, so you can feel reasonably confident if this goes off that it happened. But really, I think the magic is in the design of the platform. We give the student early alerts. So if you are seeing that the student got an AI-generated text alert, they have already seen it and had the opportunity to address it. And then secondarily, we make a real effort to empower educators to have these discussions. And Jess has already showed this. I'm just going to show it again right here. But this is, this is not definitive proof. This is actually an invitation to a conversation. And honestly, I think right now this is the best that we can do. But I have some exciting thoughts about the future and really expanding what we mean by originality analysis. So far, everything that we've talked about has been in the realm of what I would call artifact analysis. That is, you are given an artifact that somebody wrote and asking the question, is this original? That is only one very small part of the puzzle. And it turns out that what we do with Packback, we actually have the opportunity to do far, far better. One of the ways in which we can do this is behavioral analysis. You are writing in the Packback platform. We have the capability to see what you're writing. How much time are you spending editing, working on new things, deleting things, copy pasting, whatever, and can quickly pull out the signals of what a good writer looks like. What does plagiarism look like? What does using Grammarly for grammar editing look like? Whatever it is. So there is a second leg of the tripod we can stand on here with behavioral analysis that is coming soon. And then finally, authorship fingerprinting. With very, very many of our users, we actually have a large corpus of text that they wrote from over very many years. And there is a large literature on, given the text that one person has written, not their handwriting now, just the text, can you identify whether or not it was the same author? So there are approaches, currently in the marketplace, almost everything is centered on this artifact analysis. We have the capability to move out to discuss authorship fingerprinting, behavioral analysis, and just do a much more holistic approach to originality. And with that, I want to hand back to Kelsey.
Wonderful. So first and foremost, thank you so much, Jess and Craig, for very much carrying me through this entire webinar. I appreciate you. But also for continuing to build and incept just a beautiful product that makes me proud to be a former educator that now gets to privilege of working at Packback. So I want to share some final thoughts and considerations. And with this first, I want to just say, we spend a lot of time talking about AI-generated text detection and plagiarism detection. If you could go to the next slide, Jess. That said, we just know that detection doesn't equal progress. It doesn't equal inspired students. It doesn't equal educators who wake up excited to teach every morning. And it certainly doesn't lead to enhanced results in a classroom. Now, of course, when you use transparent detection, when you're transparent about your use of detection, yes, you'll see positive results. The literature shows us that. But even when you use detection transparently, it's not driving faster feedback to students. It's not giving educators tools they need to give more feedback or to be closer to their students. It's not driving assessment design. So at the end of the day, detection, there is no form of detection, even the fanciest detectors, that are a silver bullet. And quite frankly, in education, there is no silver bullet. It just does not exist. It's the holy grail, but if we had it, I would have found it already and found a way to retire on a beach in Fiji. But if you go to the next slide, what we believe at Packback, and this is years of experience in a classroom, this is years of asking educators, this is years of learning through failure. We believe that there is no silver bullet, but there is a holistic approach you can have to giving students what they need to succeed and giving them the environment and the condition that they need to feel motivated. We believe that part of that is authentic assessment. We feel like part of that is assessment design. Can we structure our assessments to really help students feel more connected to the subject matter and more motivated? I'd say this is the most important thing, the student-educator relationship. It is why I just never believe, you cannot convince me that AI is going to take an educator's job, because I know what helped my students succeed, what motivated them was what I was able to bring to the table, not even what a chatbot tutor could bring to the table, right? So fostering that relationship is how you get to purpose. It's how you get to connection. It's how you get to motivation. That is so, so important. I do feel as though a lot of the solution of academic integrity, right, or I should say academic dishonesty, is feedback. Are we giving students instant feedback in the moment? We know, we have research that shows that the faster and the more consistent we can be with our feedback with students, the better they're going to perform, 2 standard deviations higher than their peers. And then part of this solution has to be boundaries. Boundaries are important. They need to exist everywhere, and they certainly need to exist in the classroom. But boundaries and detection is not the silver bullet. It's when you put all of those things together, and probably some other things I'm not stating, where you have a truly authentic learning experience where students want to learn and we have great student outcomes. So I hope everyone feels the same way, and we're just a sea of happy critters wanting to build this for our students. But with that, I want to just again thank everyone for spending, the last hour with us. Thank you, Jess. Thank you, Craig. If you have any questions you didn't get to ask, please use the question feature, the Q&A feature. If we didn't get to answer your questions, we can download them and follow up with you, or have someone from our team follow up with you. If you're new to Packback and any of this felt exciting or inspiring, or you have curiosities, please, please, please reach out to a member of our team. You can reach anyone at curious@packback.co, and we'll put you in touch with a real human being, I promise. Thanks again, Jess, Craig. Any final words you want to share before we end this webinar and go on with our Wednesday?
Thanks, everyone. It was really wonderful to get to share this new part of our platform with you. We're excited about how it extends on the things we've been doing for a long time and offers new entry points for hopefully new faculty and new students that might not have otherwise gotten to use our tools. I'll hand off to Craig to close us out for the day. No pressure.
I'm just excited and happy. I'll leave it at that. What more could I say?
Wonderful.
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great Wednesday. Bye, everyone.